Yeah, definitely. Kind of on the same tune as what you were just speaking to. When you were at a food company, when you at Hershey, were there things that were sacred and not allowed to change?
Well, certainly in terms of the individual brands. Do you mean in terms of just operational processes or product?
No,
product
more about
reality?
the brands themselves.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that goes back to where I started, which is sort of the primacy of defining brands and equities and positioning. So, the Hershey Munsell Brown, as it's called, is the Hershey Munsell Brown, and you just don't dare, mess with that. And there was great religious debate, that I referenced about what is a Reese bar, and peanut butter and chocolate is a strange flavor combination in China. Is it okay to substitute soy? Is the definition of a Reese the sweet and salty taste, or is the definition peanut butter and chocolate? So yes, there are absolutely things that are sacred, especially for the sort of more iconic historic brands. Cheerios. I mean, the CEO of General Mills was more or less the brand manager of Cheerios. So, the assistant manager did not have a free hand to go get creative when it came to, much related to that brand. So yes, there are many things that are sacred related to some of those brands.
And just kind of as a follow-up there, how would you then be able to reconcile that sacredness about the brand with innovation needs and bringing new news to the aisle?
Well, that's where it gets really important to define what is Cheerios, what are the core non-negotiable, equities, and what are the degrees of freedom, right? So here's this, and if you do it right, you say, these things must remain true. You can't change the yellow. You can't change the typeface. It must be, still made of oats and must still be a little, tubular, circular thing. But beyond that, get creative. Do you add cranberries? Do you add walnuts? Do you add quinoa? Do you add, can you put it in packs that make it easy for moms on the go? So as long as you've made it clear, go crazy with innovation within these guardrails, but don't touch these things over here, then you have that best balance of, clarity and governance with freedom to innovate.
And was that something that would happen on a certain cadence? Would it be re-examined every few years, or was that something that, most of these had been set in stone a while back and could never be re-examined again?
No. I think, any brand manager or director or VP or CMO would want there to be, a process of ensuring that it was still current and vibrant and relevant and strong. What you, again, in the world of balance, what you don't want is every year every brand manager is, throwing the cards up in the air and starting over on a positioning. And you do want to avoid every time you move a new, manager or director and they rewrite the positioning. But at the same time, it is true that things can kind of drift, things can lose some relevance. You can discover, wow, we were, coasting on the strength of the brand, but as we stare at it, there's really an opportunity to dial up the sharpness, the emotional appeal, the differentiation, whatever it might be. So, when I was at Hershey, we were doing a fair bit of renovating the brand positionings, because there was a feeling that a number of them had gotten tired and needed to be, spruced up. So it's that judicious balance of, without reinventing the wheel every 18 months, how do you make sure that everything is as strong as it could be?
Yeah, that makes sense. One more, I think, we may have touched a little bit on this, but, kind of going back to not just the definition, but the ideology within food companies. Did you see any differences between what food companies tend to stand for versus other CPGs? That's still one that we continue to struggle with as a company that is across so many diverse categories.
Well, it's interesting because the whole question of what does a company stand for has been a broadly evolving one. That's one I've certainly spent a lot of my time talking and writing about. So I think that's the big macro, is more and more companies feeling, wow, the world expects us to stand for something and have some sense of purpose. I would say food companies, because it's food and it's stuff you put in your body and it's health related, and that brings with it all kinds of benefits and concerns and issues, and GMO and pesticides and artificial and sugar and salt and blah, blah, blah. Food probably more naturally touches on some of those issues, supply chain issues, sustainable, ethical sourcing issues. So they may be, a half step closer to the heat than some other companies in terms of just having to confront some of those issues, even if they weren't themselves, inclined to wade into social, political dialogue. So, broadly, all companies getting pulled in, food companies maybe a little bit more than some non-food product companies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, especially as you put it, since you're putting it's something you're putting in your body, so inherently has different, touches on different issues than a clean product would.
Right. Back to that, emotional sort of content of those food products.
So I think, kind of moving on past the ideology, the next area I would love to talk about is more surrounding the core capabilities and growth of a food company. And would love to get your perspective, in order to operate successfully, across the business as a whole, thinking about the various functions, get your thoughts on kind of what are a food company's required capabilities for success and for growth?
Well, broadly speaking, you'd need an innovation capability, which, has a whole bunch of subcomponent parts around insights and research, lab research, not just consumer insights research, concept development, testing, all that sort of stuff, and a culture that supports that. There's a whole body of capabilities around marketing and, brand strategy and media and execution and et cetera, et cetera. There's a broader strategy sort of horsepower that's required to say, coptering up 20,000 feet from the brand level, where's the world going? Is confection, a go-nowhere category? And do we strategically as a company need to say we're going to evolve our definition of our broader mission and play in different spaces and contemplate, M&A or mergers or divestitures or whatever it might be. So I think, that's needed for a healthy growth path. I think there's some cultural elements that are, I would think, helpful, if not essential, but collaboration, fact-based decision-making, a healthy sort of insights and analytics ecosystem,